Breaking news from the NFL. The Baltimore Ravens have fired longtime head coach John Harbaugh. That's been confirmed by our lead insider, Jonathan Jones. Harbaugh is out after 18 seasons in Baltimore. He was the second longest tenured head coach in the NFL, behind only Mike Tomlin with the Steelers. Under Harbaugh, the Ravens were a perennial playoff contender. He led them to their most recent Super Bowl title in the 2012 season, but this season was a disappointment, with Lamar Jackson nursing various injuries for most of the year. The Ravens, as a result, finished 8-9 and missed the playoffs. Our lead NFL insider, Jonathan Jones, joining us here on CBS Sports HQ. JJ, bring us up to speed with this major news out of Baltimore.
This is huge news, Haley. You're talking about the second longest tenured active head coach with just one team in John Harbaugh with the Baltimore Ravens. The winningest coach with the Baltimore Ravens in that franchise's history. One of the few active head coaches who has won a Lombardi, of course, missing out on the postseason, but not that long ago in the AFC Championship game, just a drop two-point conversion away from potentially going back last year. The head coach of a multi-time MVP, John Harbaugh, just signed a 3-year contract extension in the summer. And yes, of course, again, a disappointing season. Ravens haven't been able to get over the hump. And we were all wondering, with that AFC North battle with the Ravens and the Steelers, if the loser of that game would potentially wind up no longer being the coach of that team. A lot of questions around Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh Steelers, of course. But it's John Harbaugh who, just a couple days after the conclusion of the season, winds up being fired by the Baltimore Ravens. Multiple years still left on his deal. And Haley, I am here to tell you, and we're going to really dive into this, but this has incredible ramifications, not only for the future of potentially Lamar Jackson and that franchise, not only for the head coaching candidate pool, because a lot of teams, you would think the Ravens are going to vault way up to the top of this list. There were 6, now there's 7. And of course, the other teams looking for a head coach, well, now maybe the top candidate is now available.
So many things to consider. You mentioned it, the Baltimore angle of this, how this impacts the coaching search around the NFL. But I want to start here with Lamar Jackson. There's been a lot made over the last few weeks, last few years even, of his relationship with John Harbaugh, with his commitment to Baltimore. How will this be a factor with Lamar Jackson going forward now without a head coach?
To be determined, of course. Look, the firing of John Harbaugh certainly signals that the Ravens thought that there needed to be some fresh blood in there, that they thought that there needed to be some sort of cultural reset going on there. Whether that directly relates to Lamar Jackson and the rest of the team, if it's a collective, if it's something more pinpointed, I'm sure we're going to figure out over time with more reporting. But obviously, this has not settled Lamar Jackson's future with the Baltimore Ravens, because there's still a whole head coach to hire left to do. And if you go back a couple of years when they hired Todd Monken eventually as offensive coordinator, Lamar Jackson wanted to be more involved in that process for offensive coordinator. Surely and certainly the highest paid player on the team today and ever in Lamar Jackson will be consulted and be involved in this search for a head coach. If he's not, if they don't ask what he thinks about anything, I think that is a signal about Lamar's standing in Baltimore moving forward. As it stands right now, though, I have to imagine Lamar will be involved. And then once they do install that coach, how does that coach and Lamar interact with one another? So, again, this is major. This is a franchise that doesn't typically make moves like this, right? And what it means, we can't say just yet, because we have to see who they hire. But certainly and surely, if the Baltimore Ravens want Lamar Jackson in their future, they will involve Lamar Jackson in their present, which is now a head coaching search.
A lot to think about. Lamar, after that game, was asked about his future in Baltimore. He said, I can't even think about it right now. I'm still so stunned at how this game against the Steelers ended. So a lot of decisions to be made there. If we go back to John Harbaugh, you talked about it. Obviously, a lot of people are going to want to speak to them about their head coaching openings here. What's next for him?
I think that John Harbaugh is going to have his pick. Now, right now, there are 6 head coach openings, right? You have the Giants, you have the Titans, the Browns, the Las Vegas Raiders. We see right here of course, the Cardinals and the Falcons. Of course, he's not going to the Raiders. There are 6 available jobs to him. I can't see or envision a world where he chooses the Cleveland Browns or the Arizona Cardinals. Okay, will Tom Brady try to make a run at John Harbaugh? I mean, he's the top coach that's going to be out there on the market. He's clearly the most decorated coach who's going to be out there on the market. I don't have to talk to John Harbaugh to tell you that I'm sure that he wants to continue coaching. The New York Giants, very proud franchise, one that hasn't had any sort of winning any time lately. Do they want to turn to John Harbaugh and with general manager Joe Schoen, who may be on the last year of his contract, and will they turn over more of the football operations to John Harbaugh? This is a situation and scenario where not only can he choose where he wants to go, Harbaugh that is, but he can also sort of choose how much power he wishes to have, wants to have a little more control than the traditional head coach does, a little more say in personnel matters. He'd be able to do that. This is, Haley, we've been saying it for weeks, a weaker head coaching candidate pool, okay? And so when you get a guy like this, a big fish, who clearly still has it, I think a lot of people, reasonable people, can agree that a change could have been made in Baltimore, that people can agree to that it just got a little stale there, that it might be better for both sides. John Harbaugh, inarguably, is a top candidate this cycle, and I think a lot of people would argue is the top candidate now.
I mean, JJ, you said Tom Brady reaching out and the Raiders. That gave me goosebumps. Obviously, a lot to be decided with a lot of these openings, but we know you'll keep your eye on it. We'll be checking in with you a lot as the offseason firings have already begun. You can now make it 7 openings in the NFL. John Harbaugh, the latest there with the Raiders. Or the Ravens, excuse me.
Let's welcome in NFL expert, former player Leger Douzable. This coming just days after the Ravens lost to the Steelers, missing the postseason. Leger, there had been talk this could be coming. It is hard to imagine the Ravens without John Harbaugh, but now we are sitting here and it's reality.
Yeah, Amanda, not overly surprised. Me and you were actually just chatting before we came on here live, and I had this discussion with Jonathan Jones and Rand Carthen on our show on The Buzz on Monday. I said, this is a place to watch, Baltimore, because I think there could be wholesale changes. Because when you look at it in totality, Lamar Jackson, 2-time MVP, and some would say he should have been a 3-time MVP. They have not been to a Super Bowl yet, right? They have not maximized, the eliteness of Lamar Jackson. For some odd reason, something always happens with the Ravens. We got the Zay Flowers fumble last year, obviously. We saw Mark Andrews with the drop pass. They just, for some reason, could not get over that mountaintop. And there have been, and when you look at Lamar Jackson and the teams that have been surrounding him, some would say per roster, he's had one of the better rosters in all of football. So when you look at this, I think the ownership looked at this and said, John Harbaugh has been one of the better coaches in the NFL, right? He's been a guy that's gotten us to the playoffs in multiple years, but we just have not been able to get over that hump. Now, he is a Super Bowl winning coach and was able to do that with Joe Flacco, but we have not maximized Lamar Jackson since he's been here. I think something that was also telling, Amanda, is when you go back and look at the press conference with Lamar Jackson after that game, a reporter asked him vividly, what do you think about John Harbaugh coming back and you being with him next year? And Lamar Jackson didn't say, well, I would love for that to happen. You know what he said? I can't even think about next year. To me, that's a little bit telling when your franchise quarterback doesn't give the endorsement for the head coach right then and there after the game. So to me, I'm not overly surprised. I just think John Harbaugh's been there for so many years, I believe 18 years. And with Lamar Jackson, they have not been able to get over that hump.
Yeah, well, we saw players, I'm thinking of with the Vikings supporting J.J. McCarthy coming back. So if they're supporting him, you sure as hell would have thought Lamar would have supported John Harbaugh. Look, sometimes everybody needs a break. Sometimes you need to change the scenery. But you did mention to me that there is now a power shift, it seems, with the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. Kind of give me your take how Lamar plays into all of this.
Yeah, a lot of people haven't talked about this, but Lamar has no more guaranteed money on his deal. And for most franchise quarterbacks, that last year when you have guaranteed money in your deal, usually teams rip up that contract and give you an extension. And there were talks that the Ravens were in negotiations with Lamar, but the deal ultimately didn't get done. I go back to the first time he was a free agent. Remember, they franchise tagged him, which would have allowed teams to bid for Lamar Jackson, and nobody did because one, they felt like they were bidding against themselves. They knew the Ravens could match whatever they did. So Lamar Jackson's probably looking at this like, why do I always have to go through this when it's time to get paid? And honestly, it looks like Lamar Jackson will potentially have a say-so in the new head coach or offensive coordinator. I know that was a point of emphasis last time. I don't believe he had a say-so when Todd Monken got hired. So to me, I do believe this is a shift of power, and that the ownership and the GM are leaning towards Lamar Jackson instead of John Harbaugh. And it'll be interesting to see as they try to fill that head coaching void and offensive coordinator, how much say-so Lamar Jackson will have in that decision.
Well, you could argue this now the top head coach opening, getting to work with Lamar Jackson. Leger Douzable, we appreciate your time as we settle in to the shocking news that John Harbaugh no longer the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. We're going to stay right here with our coverage, but if you miss any of it, make sure to hit all of the information using that QR code right there, or just go to cbssports.com.